In 1936, in the far north of Japan, there was a man named Yoshie Shiratori. He was accused of a crime he never committed and forced to confess under pressure. The prosecutors wanted the death penalty. The prison guards treated him like an animal. Beatings, torture, freezing cold every single night, for sure. Prison was not a punishment, it was a slow death, and over time, he reached one simple conclusion. If he stayed, he would die. If he escaped, he might live. And that's where the story begins. The most dangerous prisoner in Japanese history. The man who escaped from prison 4 times. Aomori Prison was not an easy place to escape from. For most inmates, it was impossible. But Shiratori was different. For months, he carefully studied the guards' movements. He memorized their routines, their timing, their blind spots. He discovered one critical detail. There was a 15-minute gap between guard shifts. One morning, at exactly 6 a.m., he made his move from a water bucket in the prison bathroom. He had previously removed a thin metal wire. Now, he used it to pick the lock of his cell. His hands were frozen from the cold. His fingers barely moved. But after several painful minutes, the lock opened. The cell door swung free. That was only the beginning. Beyond his cell were multiple locked doors. And only a few minutes before the guards returned, one door, then another, and another. Against all odds, Shiratori made it out of the prison building. But freedom was still far away. Even outside, the area around the prison was heavily monitored. At 5:45 a.m., the guards returned on glanced into cell. What they saw was a prisoner sleeping under a blanket. What they didn't know was that the body beneath the blanket was nothing more than a rotting piece of wood, carefully placed to mimic his shape. The escape wasn't discovered until the next day. 3 days later, Shiratori was caught while attempting to steal medical supplies from a hospital. He was dragged back to prison. This time, the court showed no mercy. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. Most people would have broken, but instead, this was the moment when Yoshie Shiratori began to earn his legend. 6 years later, during World War II, Shiratori was transferred to Akita Prison. Guards there had heard about his escape attempt. They wanted to make an example of him. He was beaten regularly, forced into exhausting labor, made to sleep on freezing floors, thrown into solitary confinement for long periods. But this solitary confinement was different. The cell was extremely small, with a very high ceiling walls covered in smooth copper plates. No sunlight, only a faint light from a tiny window in the ceiling. It was designed specifically to hold escape artists. To make things worse, his hands were kept constantly shackled. Only one man treated him with kindness, a guard named Kobayashi, the chief guard of the prison. One stormy night, on June 15th, shortly after midnight, a guard checked Shiratori's cell, and froze. Shiratori was gone. The shackles were lying on the floor. The cell was empty. No alarms had been triggered. No sounds were heard. How? Shiratori had learned how to unlock the shackles using thin wire. He would press his hands and feet against the walls, climbing upward like a lizard. At the top, he noticed the wooden frame around the ceiling window was rotten. Every night, during moments when guards weren't watching, he would remove the shackles, climb the walls, slowly loosen the frame, then return reattach the shackles after months of preparation. During another stormy night, he finally escaped. 3 months later, on September 18th, Kobayashi heard a knock on his door. When he opened it, he was shocked. Shiratori. I stood there dirty, exhausted, and starving. Kobayashi let him inside, fed him, and listened. Shiratori. I said, I don't mind going to prison. What I can't survive is torture. I escaped twice because I was being destroyed. I am innocent. I want to turn myself in, expose the corruption, and fight for justice. This is the only way I can return to my wife and daughter. Shiratori went to the bathroom. While he was gone, Kobayashi called the police. Shiratori was arrested again. This time, his sentence was extended by 3 more years. From that moment on, he never trusted another guard again. Instead of transferring him to Tokyo, the court sent him to Abashiri Prison in Hokkaido, the northernmost prison in Japan, a place no one had ever escaped. Winter there was merciless. Temperatures below freezing, food froze before inmates could eat it. Shiratori was given only summer. Clothing, his meals were cut in half. He was chained with 20-kilogram shackles, without keyholes. They could only be removed every few weeks by specialists. The guards believed it thus would finally break him. They were wrong. Shiratori had no strength, no energy, but he had timid patience. Each day, he saved small amounts of food. He poured salty soup onto the metal shackle sand, the steel window frame. Salt caused corrosion. Slowly, silently, after months, the metal weakened, and Shiratori had something else: unnatural flexibility. He loosened the window frame, pushed his head through, then twisted his body until he slipped free. He became the first person in history to escape Abashiri Prison. For 2 years, Shiratori lived in total isolation. Inside an abandoned mine, he survived by eating wild fruit, hunting rabbits and raccoons. Eventually, curiosity pulled him back to civilization. He saw English signs everywhere, American soldiers walking the streets, Japanese women holding their hands. He picked up a newspaper. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Japan had surrendered. He realized it had been hiding for no reason in Sapporo. Hungry and desperate, Shiratori entered a tomato farm. A fight broke out. A knife was used. The farmer died. Shiratori was arrested again. This time, he was under constant surveillance. The guards reinforced the walls and ceiling, but they forgot one thing: the floor. Using only a food bowl, Shiratori dug into the wooden floor for over a month. Each night, he covered the hole and placed a wooden board under his blanket. When the guards checked, they thought he was sleeping. He escaped for the 4th time. By 1948, Shiratori was exhausted, in his 40s, broken by years of suffering. One day he sat on a bench inside. A police officer sat beside him and offered him a cigarette. That simple act destroyed him. He said, "My name is Yoshie Shiratori. I escaped from prison 4 times." He surrendered voluntarily. Japan was changing. The courts listened. They ruled that the farmer's death was self-defense. They considered the abuse, the torture, and the injustice. The death penalty was removed. Shiratori was sentenced to 20 years and transferred to a warm prison in Tokyo. He never tried to escape again. In 1961, after 14 years, he was released. He returned to Ale, reunited with his daughter, and in Japan, Yoshie Shiratori became a legend. Not just a man who escaped prison, But Emmanuel refused to be broken.